Welcome to TimSold Talks. Join us as we dive into all things real estate, talk about business, food, cars, and much more with industry experts. Dream it, believe it, achieve it. All right, welcome back to another episode of TimSold Talks. Very honored to have Sam Fellows here join us, legendary race car driver, and he'll talk about his experiences with us. Thank you very much for joining us, Sam.
Thank you. I don't know about legendary, but I appreciate my dad maybe, but I appreciate the sentiment.
Soon to be. And before we begin, in keeping tradition with our show, we brought a little bit of food for us to try. That's Felix Norton gourmet cookies just around the corner from us. If you haven't tried, I would go highly check them out. Fabulous cookies. Sam, would you like to try some?
Cookies, these are my kryptonite.
Yeah.
My wife loves Felix Norton as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Looks like a...
They're always so soft and sweet, and it's like, but crunchy on the outside.
Yeah, I would probably eat too many of these. Not a good pre-race
Not
meal,
pre-race. When's the next race coming up?
I have a while, so I'm just doing the road courses in NASCAR Canada this year. So we did the first race of the season, was a road course, and now the rest are ovals until August, and that's the Grand Prix of Trois-Rivières. So it's in Quebec. Really cool street course.
How long is the track, or what's the course?
Trois-Rivières. The track is, that's a good question. I don't know the length of the track. It's about a minute and 15-second lap, something like that. But it just flows really well. It's been there since like the 60s, I think they've been racing there.
Okay.
And that's actually where Gilles Villeneuve kind of got discovered, because back in I think it was the 60s, maybe it was the 70s, but they used to like pay to bring Formula One drivers over, and now this would like never happen. But I guess it was like the city or the province of Quebec, but they had like it would have been 1976, I guess, because it was James Hunt and a few other guys at the time. I think like Patrick Depailler, and they came over to race Formula Atlantic, and Gilles Villeneuve was basically just like, crush them all. And Hunt called over to the team principal of McLaren, and he's like, this guy is unreal.
Yeah.
And they signed him for, I think, 1 or 2 races, and then Enzo Ferrari was like, I need this guy. So then he signed him to Ferrari. So it's got a cool history. It's a cool track. It's really hard on brakes, so it's a driver's track. Got to take care of your stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for those who don't know, Sam's been a race car driver for quite a few years now, and obviously having a racing legend as a father figure. Tell us about your upbringing and everything. How are you racing today? Why are you into racing today?
Well, yeah, I mean, indoctrinated from birth. No, I mean, I'm very blessed, and I feel blessed that I've been able to have such a cool childhood, and my parents brought us up at the track, me and my brother and sister, and my dad. He raced a lot of stuff, but notably he was able to race for the Corvette factory team. So that was the late '90s when they started that program, and went to Le Mans, won Le Mans twice in class.
Nice.
Podium a bunch, and then won the 24 Hours of Daytona. So he's got a real Rolex Daytona that he won. Yeah, you can go buy one, I guess, but if you win one, it means something.
It means something else.
But I mean, I can't even afford to buy one, so that's okay too. But he did a lot of NASCAR as well on the road courses. He was a road course ringer, so to speak. So. I always hoped that I would get behind the wheel. Yeah. But it didn't happen until a little later in my life. I wasn't like super young. Like I did a little bit of go-karting and stuff, but the focus for my family was always my dad, and his career went pretty late into his life. Like he was still racing into his early 50s.
Oh wow. Okay.
Professionally. So we were following him around, going to all the races. Went to Le Mans a couple times. It was pretty cool. So it was just, it was like a dream, childhood. It was like, so cool. Got to meet so many cool drivers and people, and everyone's like a big family at the track, right? So it's hard to have that happen to you and not want to keep it going. and so I was hoping I would be the driver one day. So now finally I made it to, the level I'm at, which is NASCAR Canada. So it's, I think it's probably the highest level of racing in our country. Yeah. There's still, places I want to go with my racing. But right now we just started our own team last year.
Yeah.
And it was a rocky first year last year, but this year started off really well.
What's the team called?
Fellows McGraw Racing.
Okay.
So yeah, when my dad was, before he got involved with General Motors, I think it was 94, 95, he started racing with Chevrolet, and he's been involved with GM ever since.
Wow. Okay.
So they've been really loyal to him, and he's been loyal to them. But before that, he was in a Mustang, driving for Jack Roush. Probably heard the name Roush.
Yeah.
And Roush had a sponsor out of Texas called AER, Authorized Engine Repair, and they were doing a lot of work for Ford back then, and they still do a lot for a lot of the American car companies, but now they do a lot for GM as well.
Okay.
But just a really, like some of the nicest people you could meet from Texas. And when my dad went to Chevrolet, they went with him, and they've been sponsoring, him ever since. And when I started racing, they were like, wanted to step up and help me. So the McGraw family and AER, they're our prime like color sponsor, like it's the cars all in their colors and stuff. So but really
that's what all the logos are.
Everything all logoed up, but really it's more of like a family connection. Honestly, they're like super close to us, and it's pretty awesome. It's emotional to meet people like that support you, and then you get to do something with them and take it where it is now. So it's
amazing.
cool.
Okay, so the team's, you said, fairly new. It's a new team that you guys...
it's pretty new. Yeah, I was driving for another team, and then we just kind of, like in sports, these things always happen, whether it's like hockey or basketball or whatever. Like you kind of have a moment where you're like, I need to do something else, need to move on. But we were in the middle of a season, and there was really no open spots, so we got this crazy idea to start our own. Seemed like a good idea at the time. A lot of hard work. We got a car ready for the first race that we were ready for was Toronto Indy last year. And the car was actually pretty good the first race. It didn't finish well, but that's another story. But we did, had some pace. And then, things just went bad. We were just, probably trying too hard, trying to get equipment that wasn't going to work for us. And so, just a bunch of bad results. So this year it was like, let's build a brand new car. Let's start from scratch. And we had an amazing result on the last weekend. So we finished fourth out of 30 cars. So to be in the top 5 is pretty tough in this series. So I'm really happy with that. So
no, it's amazing results.
Great start.
Great start. Right. So, and for, the listeners that don't know, how to create if they were thinking about getting into the racing sport, how would they start a team or a racing team? Or
I think there's a saying in racing. It's like, if you want to make $1 million, you have to start with like $2 million. We're doing basically, as much as we can afford. We have like support from AER. I've been supported the last couple of years by a mattress company called the Polysleep. They're out of Quebec, and they are just like fantastic people and want to be involved with us. So we have sponsorship this year with Mobile One. They're supplying all of our lubricant and engine oil and all that stuff. So you need sponsors, and if you don't have sponsors, you need to unfortunately spend your own money to get into the sport, whether it's go-karting or low-level cars. You got to spend some money to get on the grid, and it's kind of sad that that's how it is. But I mean, even low-level hockey, for kids, you're spending
gym ring time and everything. You need to spend.
If you're playing rep and you're spending like decent amount of money, but I mean, racing is crazy because, at least with hockey, it's like, here's your upfront cost for the year and your equipment, and then maybe your kid breaks a stick, so you got to buy like a $300 stick or something or whatever. But it's like racing, it's like every weekend you got to buy new tires, every weekend you got to do brakes and engine oil and all that stuff, and a lot of consumables. So it's expensive, and it can be very daunting, and turns a lot of people away. But my dad's always said, if you believe in yourself, if you're good enough, somebody will find you. And you see those stories all the time. And the biggest one, like I mentioned, was Gilles Villeneuve. He's kind of the inspiration for Canadians because he came from like nothing, and he was just raw talent, pure unbelievable operator, not just cars. Like he could drive, wheel anything, snowmobiles, motorcycles. Like he was just insane.
He just had this instinct, right? Yeah.
So if you happen to get yourself into a go-kart, or your kid does, and they're just fast and they love it, somebody's gonna find them. Hopefully, so hopefully we find them and we can help. them out. That's
help
what we've been
groom
doing
them, right?
Well,
so you guys have an academy, or what's your?
My dad's been involved for years in go-karting, and that's been like where we've tried to find some of these kids to help get to the next level. And the first one was sponsored by Sunoco. It was Sunoco Ron Fellows Karting Championship, and now it's just the Ron Fellows Karting Championship. But the very first version of it, the Sunoco series, we found like a bunch of drivers who are now professionals, and probably the star of that series was Robert Wickens, who ended up in DTM, who was Rookie of the Year at the Indy 500, who was on pole for his very first ever IndyCar race, and then unfortunately got really badly hurt that season. And he's been in a wheelchair, unfortunately. But he is, anybody will tell you Robert Wickens was one of those guys like with unbelievable raw talent, and even in his injury and recovery, he's back racing now, and he just won a TCR championship in IMSA last year. Like the guy has an unbelievable drive, and his mental game is just off the charts. So but you have to try to find these kids and find these people that you want to help develop and get to the next level. So yeah.
And speaking of talent and everything, what makes a good race car driver? What is the talent?
That's a good question. I think the number one thing is like all athletes, there's a mental processor that you have to focus on the internal factors, the external factors. And in hockey, a lot of times they'll say, this guy's really fast, this guy's got a great shot, and then they'll say sometimes this kid really sees the ice really well. And those are the kids, I think, typically that maybe they take a little bit longer to develop some of their skills, but they have the mental game where that's really hard to teach. Like if you have that ability to slow things down as you see it, you're gonna probably do well in whatever sport you're doing. You'll probably do well in whatever business you're in, honestly. If you just have that ability to kind of like take things in as it's
analyze
happening.
it and be analytical.
Exactly. Make a decision and choose the right thing. But that, and there's a lot of different factors, but and one of the things that I've tried to do, and my dad is like frustratingly good at, is just like feeling the car. And it's like we met at a Porsche I was instructing you at a Porsche event, right? And I wouldn't say this there, but like one thing I cannot teach is like feel. Like I can try to teach you the techniques and the basics, but when you're looking for somebody who has a real feel, and I'll give you a little compliment here, even though I'm not trying to butter you up too much, but you were really good on the autocross, and I think that was like one of your first times ever, like just driving, like on track. And so someone like you, it's like you have a natural feel for whatever it is to be able to turn the car into the corner and slow it down and work on the momentum. And you won that autocross. I think. Yeah, you did. I thought so.
Peace.
There you go. Yeah. No, so obviously you have a natural ability. So you're looking for that, and you're looking for when you can feel the car and feel what's happening, and then you go to a racing level where everything is customizable. It's not like the Porsche GT3 or Corvette Z06. You kind of get the car, and it kind of needs to be set up neutral for all different driving styles, right? And that car is really nice to drive, and blah 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 blah, whatever, right? A race car is fully customizable, and it has to be set up to the driver's driving style. So at the racing level, it's not about learning the track. It's not about your own, development. You have to be constantly talking to your crew chief, your mechanic, your engineers about what you need to go faster. And so that if you can explain that, if you have the vocabulary and the smarts to explain that, then you will naturally go faster, because the changes that you make on your setup will help you. and it should make it easier for you. You know, the more the car is going to be suited to you, the easier it is just to drive it. So
I see.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's got a lot to unpack because, like, you know, for someone that's not really into that field, especially our audience, understanding, you know, what needs to make it happen is a big part of the process. And could you explain some of the different driving styles just so people can understand what that means? Or
sure, yeah, it's kind of like golf. I mean, you can see a guy like Tiger Woods and a guy like John Daly, just two completely different
opposites,
people. And, you know, they can both go to the first hole at Augusta or wherever, and they can both make a par, right?
Yeah.
Like I can be a completely different style driver to, you know, this guy over here, and we can both run a lap time within like half a second of each other, right? So, you know, my style has always been more of try at least to focus on the momentum, braking in a straight line. You know, I want to be off the brake when I turn the steering wheel. So I'm trying to brake just enough that I can turn in, and maybe I turn in a little bit early. I try to drive on the front. A lot of guys try to drive on the rear. So I try to drive more with the front, almost feeling like kind of pitchy on the front. And a lot of guys who drive the rear, they slide around and stuff. Kind of goes back and forth, like which one is better, which one's not. But typically, if you can conserve your fronts, you'll be able to, you know, have better tires at the end of the race. Because you can conserve your rears. It's just about your throttle input with your foot. That's, you know, not too bad. But and then the other, I guess, when they would say there's braking in a straight line, the opposite would be what people call trail braking. So holding the brake, it's basically to the center of the corner. And I'll use like a combination of that. Some tracks will have corners where it works better to hold the brake while you're in the corner. But for me, mentally, I can't get over the trail braking side of being on the brake in the middle of the corner. Like, for me, if I'm on the brake, I'm losing time. I want to be on the brake as little as possible. So it's a fine line, but like I said, there's people who make that work, make the other way work. So if there's a corner where, you know, I don't even have to brake, I can just let off the throttle earlier. Like I'll do that because I hate that pedal in the middle. I don't want to use that pedal. So hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer.
Yeah, so it's kind of like personal preferences and your own kind of like understanding of what you need to do in the vehicle, right? So
some people are very aggressive. Some people are very smooth. Like one thing you'll hear, you know, you'll look and you'll say at certain drivers on, say, even just the F1 grid, like some people are sliding around and they look look spectacular, but very few drivers are able to be both fast and spectacular. We're talking about like the Sennas, the Villeneuves, you know, Verstappen when he was on that Jeddah lap where he hit the wall, that was like a spectacular fast lap. But usually when you're sliding around too much, you're going sideways more than you're going forward. So you're not actually making a amount of lap time. So they'll say, oh, he's really smooth or she's really smooth, the driver's really smooth. It's like, you know, smooth is fast. And so it doesn't always, being spectacular doesn't always, you know, translate to lap time. Like Lewis Hamilton, I think, is probably the smoothest guy I can remember. And when he had, you know, the car at Mercedes, you just watch his hands. He's just so smooth. And you see some of the guys at the back of the grid where their cars aren't as good, and they're just like, you know, like trying to just sawing at the wheel. So it's a combination of driver and machine for sure.
No, it's a fascinating sport because that's the one, you know, I really didn't get into racing or following it much until some of the Netflix series about the F1 ones. And I had no idea. Like, that's like, you know, yes, you are putting your life on the line every single time you step in that car. You got a whole pit crew. There's like billions of dollars poured into this to make it work. And it's a very fascinating world.
F1 is crazy. Like it's so daunting even just as a driver, I think, these days to even think about trying to make it to F1. Like I didn't even have to worry about it because I'm tall. You probably can't tell from when you're watching on TV, but I'm like 6'5", so my F1 career was over by like 13 years old. I'm just never going to fit in that car. So I was always like, okay, I'll drive something with a roof because that's safe. But I mean, it's the amount of dollars that it takes to get to Formula One now, and the things that have to go right. And you know, like Lewis Hamilton catching a break like him, where he was a kid scouted by Ron Dennis, the McLaren principal, and Ron's like, I see something in this kid. And he's like 12 years old or something, and they were like signed him to a McLaren development deal, and then world champion with McLaren. I think his second season. I think he almost won it in his rookie season. I think, but I think it was 2008. He was world champion. Yeah, I think so. With McLaren. But yeah, I mean, just it's amazing. It's the very top of the sport.
Yeah.
But to make a living in racing, you don't have to go to F1. And that's one thing that was always confusing for me as a kid. I'd be like, well, what does your dad do? Well, he's a race car driver. Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, he's not in Formula One. I'm like, well, yeah, he's not in Formula One, but there's a lot other things in racing than Formula One. So, and he's gotten to race. It's cool because after F1, you can't race F1 forever. You got to go somewhere. So he's gotten to race with and against a lot of ex-Formula One drivers and got to meet some of those people. And it's pretty cool. Like a lot of them are pretty cool people.
I mean, they're just like guys that like to drive fast cars.
It's just like the normal people that you meet like at the car meet or whatever. It's like we're all the same people. We just like to go fast.
Okay, I wanted you touched on a bit of the differences of F1 and NASCAR and like what's your perspective on either, like different skill set or like what's
for sure. There's a few like geniuses who I think could, like Kyle Larson. He's been champion at least once or twice in NASCAR in the Cup Series, and he's actually just qualified. Now he's racing an IndyCar at the Indy 500, and he qualified on the second row, like 5th place for next weekend's. Or I'm not sure when this is coming up, but the 2024 Indy 500. So he's to be in the first within the top 10 at Indy, you have to be incredibly fast. And this is a guy who's never really driven a downforce car. Like he's a dirt guy, a stock car driver. So there's some people who are just kind of anomalies, like Verstappen. I think he could come to NASCAR and with the right equipment, I'm sure he would be competitive. They have these brains where they can just figure out how to go fast, which is pretty amazing. But I mean, the disciplines are way different. But you see sometimes crossovers. I know Kimmy's been trying to do some NASCAR stuff. I'm not sure, how successful he's been with that, but obviously he's having fun. It's tough. Like NASCAR is just a completely different beast. Like it's
how so? Like
it's just like the cars are way heavier than Formula One cars. You have little to no downforce, so you're really driving the car in a completely different way. With Formula One, it's like you want to try to actually, the faster you can go into some of these downforce dependent corners, if you have the grip like Verstappen, the more you can push the car, the faster you will go. There's a limit with NASCAR where you can overdrive the car, and if you're over that limit, you're just punishing your tires. You're not going to make things last. And that's one thing my dad was really good at, was like saving his equipment in these NASCAR races. And
it's more of endurance.
Exactly. And they're so long. I mean, they're 300, 400 mile races or whatever, or 250, I think was that. Maybe it was 250, 300 mile races. Something like that on the road course in NASCAR. And you got to save your stuff to the end. Save your brakes because it's not like, I think F1 is like a carbon brake system. So they're very efficient brakes. They last a long time. The NASCAR stuff is meant to be challenging in terms of the way the brake systems work on our cars. You have to save your brakes. In NASCAR Canada, we have a very different, you could almost say primitive brake system, and but it's done for a reason. It's done because that's, a lot of people look at it and say that's driving. We still have 4-speed, we still have a clutch. Got to save your brakes. You can't be crazy in the first 10 laps of the race, otherwise you got nothing at the end.
So it's more of a strategy, I guess, part of the strategy involved.
And Formula One has just become like, you're just trying to go basically as fast as you can. And even endurance racing, like 24-hour races back in the 60s, 70s, if you've seen like Ford versus Ferrari or whatever, they're basically talking about going, a certain speed to get the car, home at the end of the race. And now endurance racing is like qualifying laps for like 24 hours. Like you're going as hard as you can for 24 hours. Like it's actually crazy. So it's a completely different beast.
Okay. And I know in the F1 they have advantages because the more money you spend on the team, the better the car development. Is there kind of like the same is it a level playing field in the NASCAR race, or is it similar to what like
everything in racing is like you can spend money to go faster, but typically the series will try to stop that because inevitably you have people who can and people who can't in terms of the affordability of it. So I know in the Cup Series they just introduced last year or two a new car, and a lot of the stuff is meant to be kind of spec. And NASCAR I think themselves are making and manufacturing a lot of these parts, so a lot of the stuff should be available to everybody. But still, the biggest thing is the research and development by the manufacturers. And so NASCAR right now, I think Cup Series is Chevy, Ford, and Toyota. And in Canada, we don't have Toyota, but we still have Dodge bodies. So the more that these manufacturers put into engine development and this and that, it makes a difference.
Makes a difference, right? So it is still money talks, and
and the top teams who spend the most money, they get extra help from the manufacturers, and that's just kind of how it is. So.
No, I mean that's a part of the business, right? So you can never really have a same playing field, I would say. Right?
But, and then you get into in endurance racing. You've probably heard of BOP. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
This is like it's called balance of performance, and it's basically, and it makes sense in theory. You say you have a GT field where you got an Aston Martin, a Porsche, a Corvette, BMW, Lamborghini. Like if you put all these cars on, like a closed, road or whatever, and just said go, it's going to be a lot different, maybe there'd be a couple cars that would be close just based on, their specs, but everything is going to handle differently, different brakes, different engines. So BOP basically is a system in which all these cars can compete on a level-ish playing field. But the problem with BOP is that, maybe the Porsche is better suited for these tracks. So the Porsche does really well. And then they say, okay, now we got to put weight on the Porsche. And then the Corvette does really well. And they're like, okay, now we got to take, air out of their engine, or we do this or that. So it's constantly trying to keep it level. And when you're messing around like that, the teams get really upset because somebody's winning. The BMW is winning this weekend, and now the Porsche's in the back. And then the next weekend, it flops around a bit. So, but you have to at least acknowledge that the people who do it well. And I think IMSA, they may get a bad rap from time to time, but they're the kind of the governing body. I think they do a pretty good job. So they try to make it as
fair as they can. Yeah.
So.
Okay. And for those that don't know or don't really watch NASCAR, how many? On the F1 grid, it's like 12 teams, right?
Right. Yeah.
And 2 cars, so it's 24 drivers. But NASCAR is you see quite a bit more.
Yeah, I think NASCAR you can have up to 40-something cars entered. Cool. So sometimes for the big races like the Daytona 500. Say Talladega, a lot of the road courses in NASCAR Cup Series bring in a lot of cars too. Because there is a lot of interest in road course, and the TV numbers do really well. You have to make the race, so you have to qualify for the race. And if you're, if you go out for qualifying, there's 50 cars, and you're, 48th, and they're only going to accept 43 or 45 or whatever it is. It's like, go home. Sorry, it's like you didn't make the cut at a golf tournament or something, right? It's like, sorry.
Oh, man.
So. Our series in NASCAR Canada, it kind of moves around. I think there's probably about 18 to 20 cars that are full-time, but then we get a lot of interlopers. And like me this year, I'm just doing the road courses. So this last weekend, we had 30 cars entered. So it's pretty awesome.
Okay, no, it's still pretty big field.
Yeah, it's a big grid. It's, there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of traffic, and it's a completely different style of racing than F1. It's they, if it was referees, you could use the word like they keep their whistles in their pockets. In NASCAR, I mean, if they encourage the entertainment style of bumping and beating and banging on each other, and if something is egregious, they'll penalize you for it. Like if you just absolutely clean somebody out, like go through the grass to wreck somebody like dangerously. But for the most part, if you bump somebody and get by them, or put somebody in the wall, like it's kind of NASCAR. It's part of the business. It's part of the way it is now. And there's it's crazy in that way, but it's fun in that way, and I think it's some people don't like it, some people do, but I think we put on a show. Like there's lots of lead changes, there's lots of fighting, there's pit strategy, there's door-to-door action, hitting each other, bouncing off each other. I don't think I've ever brought a car home that didn't at least have one like donut on the side of it from like touching another car. So, but F1, it's like you
cannot touch.
It's crazy. And even this year at the Australian Grand Prix, it's like Alonso got a penalty just for the way he was driving in front of George Russell. Like that one, I don't understand. It's like. They're just so like crazy on
formula or regulated.
So,
well, speaking of which, like, have you had any kind of accidents or any like any life scare like?
I think there's another saying in racing. There's racing drivers who have crashed, and there are racing drivers who are about to. So I'm in the have crashed category. Luckily, I think you want to get it over with, and if it's not too bad, then you're lucky you get away with it. But I was in a Porsche Cup race in 2019, and it was it's just you're trying as hard as you can. It was at Montreal. Big F1 crowd, and we're the support race. And on Sunday, I just went for a move that probably wasn't on, and a couple guys in front of me, it was just bad timing. They kind of checked up as I was making the move, and like went over a big curb, hit this guy, and just didn't get my hands off the steering wheel in time. Because it has power steering, but the Cup cars have a pretty heavy like style steering wheel. So when I went to try to get my hand off the one of the spokes, just took my thumb and just broke my wrist.
Just broke your wrist.
A lot of people break their wrist like that.
Like
on
just falling or whatever,
or whatever on their bike or whatever.
But yours is the other
way. Mine was this way, so they put a little piece of metal right in there. But I broke my wrist in the best possible place at a Formula One race because I got airlifted out of the event. I went to the hospital in Montreal and I saw the number one orthopedic surgeon was on call because it was F1 weekend. And he made a call to his colleague in like Sunnybrook or whatever. And they got me. They were like, this guy's a race car driver. He needs to get back in the car, blah, blah, blah. And so this was Sunday. I was operated on Wednesday. So
that's amazing.
It was unbelievable. It was just, but luckily it's part of my profession and everything that they got me through quickly to get it done, and I didn't have to stay on a wait list because I could have been on there for a long time.
A few months at least.
I missed a couple races because of that, but I still got back in the car.
We're talking about what, like in a few months or 2 months?
It took about a month or so.
Wow.
And I got actually cast off like a week before a race, and they didn't let me go. I was trying my best, and they were just like, my doctor didn't clear me, and the series was like, did you get clearance from your doctor? And I was like,
it's coming.
It's coming. And it was like, no, so you're not racing. So that was tough. That was tough. But eventually I did, obviously, and then I got back in the car. So
was there any PTSD after that or no?
Yeah, a little bit, honestly.
A little bit, right?
Yeah. I think it's in the moment you're like, I got to get through this. I got to get back in the gym. I got to get my my arm fixed. I got to stay fit, and you're just going, and you don't take the time to check your own mental health. And that's something since then that I've been tried to be. I don't have a huge platform, but whenever I can, I try to talk about mental health because it's super important to me, and I think it touches everybody's families in different ways. It touched my family, and I didn't probably take the time to check in on myself. But luckily I was able to get through it, and COVID didn't help because that was 2019 when I broke my wrist, and it was next year, I was like, I'm gonna redeem myself, I'm gonna come back, and it was like
shut down,
no racing, nothing. So that was tough.
And how do you? So speaking of that, how do you train then? Or is it simulations, or how do you?
I have used simulators. I'm not very good at them. I mean, the people who are so good on the sim, they're they're referred to sometimes as aliens because it just doesn't make sense to me how fast they are. They're naturally quick on the simulator. I think I have a natural ability to be fast in real life. Because one of the biggest things is just the physicality of the load that you're going through a corner and the G-forces you're pulling, and you don't get that on the sim, but you have the same basic techniques of how to go fast. So you can train on the sim, especially I used it when I was in Porsche Cup to learn some tracks that I hadn't been to before, and you get a good visual reference for that. But no, my biggest thing is like, I go to the gym. I do a combination of like strength and cardio. And my trainer is a guy named Wes O'Neill. Shout out to Wes. I've been working with him for like several years now, and we just kind of have like a dialed in like schedule of off season is like a lot of strength, like strength. And then as soon as we start to ramp up to race season, it's like cardio, start building the endurance, start to ramp all that up. Because naturally you start to lose your muscle mass and your weight when you're going towards more of the cardio, right? So try to build up as much strength as possible, and then get into the cardio. And then you do some neck exercises do help, especially on the ovals, because you're just constantly going left,
right. So support your
neck just takes all the brunt of it. So sometimes I just lean my head against like the headrest on the oval because it's easier than trying to keep your head upright. You just like lean your head over and just keep driving like that for like 300 laps. So.
And go get a chiro adjustment afterwards.
I saw my chiropractor today actually. So I have a chiropractor in Oakville that I go to. I've been going there for quite a while. And my biggest problem is my back. As a taller guy, it's so hard on my back. So.
And the races are like lengthy in time too, right? So you're like compressed a lot, and
you're tied in really tight, our races are like typically I'd say around 100 miles. So the one on Sunday was a 200-kilometer race. So around Mossport, or CTMP, is 51 laps.
51 laps.
Wow. So 51 laps. And you have to do a mandatory stop. That's how they build in the strategy to it. So, but you can't take tire and fuel at the same time. We decided not to take tires. So we came in pretty early, like in the first 10 laps, to do a green flag stop to take fuel, and then everybody else had to stop later on for a caution during a caution. So then I went to the front of the line.
Nice.
I restarted second, and I was just kind of chasing the guy in first for a while. And then just held onto my tires, and we just kind of got lucky with the way the cautions went. Got to cool my tires a little bit during the caution, and then heat them back up. So it was just. Sometimes everything just comes together. And you're just like, hey, thanks, man.
No, that's great to hear. Sorry about this. I'm getting so fascinated by all the technical stuff, though. It's really, it's fascinating to hear because, when people think driving, it's just a car, right? But it's a lot of intricacies to it. And like you said, the setup. And I think, with F1, it's kind of crazy because they got like controls for like every single thing. But how is that different in NASCAR?
It's super bare bones. Like the only adjustment I have in the car is a brake bias. So it's controlling the amount of brake front and rear. So typically, most tracks like where you're braking a lot, you want to run almost as much rear bias as you can before you start locking up on the rears. And that's because when you're getting on the brakes with the rear bias, it actually kind of sucks the rear down a little bit. So it allows you to kind of get the car with the attitude of the car, like slowed down in a straight line. And that's how I like to do it. At CTMP, you can go a little bit more front bias because you kind of want the front to grab in first and try to keep your momentum up as you're turning into those corners. NASCAR is different because in the rear we have like a lock differential. So if you lock up on the rear, you can get some what they call axle hop. So the rears are like connected basically, right? So when you're on and off the throttle, it's turning the locker. It's a Detroit locker style on and off. So when you're braking in a straight line, those are connected. And so if you go too much on the brake, you're going to start bouncing basically both rear tires and you get what they call an axle hop. So that's probably the scariest thing that you can get because when that starts going, you just start pushing forward. It's like the worst understeer feeling. So, but that's it. That's it, man. That's brake bias. And that's it. So I have a helmet blower and I have a little water bottle and I got none of the F1 stuff. So I got no like electric drink water straight into my mouth. I got a little tube in my suit, and when the safety car comes out, I like get some Gatorade. And that's it. So it's super bare bones. We don't have any electronics on our steering wheels. Basically the instruments that I can see are the tachometer, water pressure, water temperature, oil temp, and oil pressure, and that's it.
So it's all it's not as high tech, I guess. Right?
No,
Yeah,
and that's kind of
that's the raw feel of it. That's the thing that
the
differentiates it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you currently working on then? You said you got this upcoming season. You got the new team.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
what's
just
in
trying to
store?
get some better results, and top 5 was a good start for us.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
definitely.
but there's still more to go. Like we can still go faster because the top 3. In NASCAR, they do what they call overtime. So if there's a late caution, for years a lot of fans don't like it when races end in cautions, and still some series will do it. Like even Formula One or IndyCar, if there's a late race caution, the race will sometimes just end under a safety car, and a lot of people don't like that. And so NASCAR years ago, what they instated was overtime. They're like, we want a show. We want, guys to be fighting to the last lap, to the last moment.
Okay.
And I kind of love it. Like, I kind of love that idea. I mean, it's crazy when you hear them on the radio saying, okay, we're going to overtime, you're like, okay, here we go. Like, this is about to get nuts. But it
That's
gives
when
you
everyone
that
just pushes
last
it,
shot.
right?
Yeah, it gives you that last shot to make something happen. So our race went to overtime. So we actually did 53 laps, I guess.
Okay.
But
compared to the standard, what, like 48?
I think we do 51. Yeah, so we did two extra laps.
Yeah,
and it's it's crazy. So I can't even remember what your question was. I was just talking about overtime.
What what are you working on, and what's
what are you
looking forward to?
Yeah, it's a very passionate sport. As soon as I start talking about something, I'll just go on off on a tangent.
Yeah.
But no, working on some better results, and still. That's what I was saying. In overtime, the top 3 cars were able to get away. They had fresh tires.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, okay, well, we didn't take tires, but still, I think I should have been a little bit closer to them. So how do we get faster? So we'll do some testing. We'll come back for the next race and try to be faster. So 4th is great, but you want to win. So we got 3 more spots to make up. But until then, I instruct at CTMP. My biggest thing is my family. We have a kind of a GM experience. So we do that. And then I moonlight a little bit. I have to hide my name tag so that nobody sees, because I've always been a Chevy guy. But I go to the Porsche experience, and you know what, they do a really good job. And it's a small, Canada's small, so it's a small community of racers, and they need instructors, and I'm happy to help them. It's a legendary company, and happy to be one of their instructors. Like I said, I am a Chevy guy. I do love Corvettes, but I try to hide my face when I'm there. No, I'm just joking. But so I'll instruct there, and help out on the karting side. So like my life is just at the track.
Crazy.
At the track constantly. And then, we'll go racing 3 more times later in August. So
wow. Okay. Busy. And with the new addition to your family too, right?
Yeah, little baby, little hopefully future race car driver.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I mean, it's part of the business, right? Like if you're always there, then naturally they're going to be like, well, where's daddy? And
that's what happened to me. That's how I got bitten by the bug. But, my dad was a driver. Yeah. His brother was a driver. So my dad, my uncle, my dad's uncle was a rally driver in Canada. So it's a multi-generational thing now here. So it's just kind of part of our DNA now.
It's what you guys know. So
we got race fuel in our veins.
Awesome. So 2 questions I ask our guests before they go is, what's the one type of food you eat for the rest of the year? Or for the rest of your life, if you had to choose just that one food.
One food?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
If you weren't on a racer diet.
If I wasn't on a racer diet, pasta.
Pasta?
Yeah, I just love pasta. But I find like a lot of people do carb load before races.
Yeah.
Doesn't really work for me.
No.
I don't think that I need, like, I like protein, so I'll do more like a bit of an easier carb, like a sweet potato or vegetables or something like that.
Yeah.
Protein and that kind of thing. That's my pre-race.
Okay. Cool.
Meal,
All right, so protein.
But if I had no race diet, I'd be eating pasta like every single day.
Every single day. Okay. And what's the one feature you would like to have in your dream home?
One feature I'd like to have in my dream home? Like 8-10 car garage.
Nice. I think every car guy's dream, right? Like, some underground, cool.
A few hoists in there. Maybe a simulator just when I get bored in the winter. real man cave, some race cars.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't need that. You have the real thing. You just go to your track, right? So
yeah. You can always have more cars. They're like collectibles, right? It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's another car.
Speaking of which, how many cars are in the collection in your family, or too many? Or
a few. Like I don't personally like own any other than the race car. I guess is a family asset.
Yeah.
Actually, we have two because we have one that we bought last year and built this new one. So we got 2 race cars. We got a race car for sale. If you want to buy a race car, come hit me up.
Yeah.
But and my dad has, in 2007, he was lucky enough to have, after all the races he won and championships for Corvette, they actually named a Corvette after him. So he has a Ron Fellows edition Corvette. They sold 399 of them. It's a 2007 Z06, 505 horsepower, Arctic white with like red stripes. So we have one of those. Yeah. And we have his 1989 winning Camaro that he raced in back in the day. And they just called the GM Challenge Series. That kind of launched his career. So an old 89 IROC and 2007 Corvette. So those will be mine, I guess, one day to fight over with my brother. So we'll have to figure that out.
Speaking of which, do they race at all? Or are they?
My brother was actually, he's an incredible athlete. He actually, and when he loved hockey, but when we were both starting in go-karts, we did arrive and drive. So we did a style where you don't have to own your own stuff. You just basically show up and drive around a little bit and have fun. And that was kind of our entry into, hey, do we like this? Yeah. And I was like,
this is me. Yeah.
This is what I want to do. And my brother was actually really good, but he said to my dad, he's like, I like hockey more. Is that okay? And my dad loves hockey, like lifelong Leafs fan. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. So my brother, he had a really good career. He played 4 years in the OHL. He played on a team with Connor McDavid. He played for the Erie Otters. Okay. He went to the Memorial Cup with the team. It was Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat and Fogel. Forget his first name. Warren Fogel, I think so. Anyways, but yeah, a bunch of guys who, are in the show now. So it's kind of tough for him. He didn't make it there, but I mean, he's just an incredible athlete. He's an incredible person. My brother's like my hero, my best friend. And my sister, she loves racing too. Yeah. But she's just she's so smart. Like I think one day maybe she'll find her way into like a racing like business. Yeah. But she's an ad executive in New York. So she went for like a slightly different route. But I mean, racing's in her blood too. Yeah. So she was.
Never know.
Yeah, she was there. She was there on the weekend. She came in from New York with her family. So it was everything came together. Where it was like all the family and friends were there, and we had a really good race. Yeah. So you gotta love it when that happens. So.
Amazing! Congratulations on that. So
yeah, it was good. Like I said, we got 3 more spots to go. We gotta win that race.
I gotta win it, right? So
yeah.
All right. Oh, well, that pretty much wraps up this week's episode of TimSold Talks. Thank you very much, Sam, for coming in. And but for our fans that don't know you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's probably the one I use the most. It's just at Sam Fellows. The O in Fellows is actually a 0 because there's somebody out there who's got the real tag. So but if you start typing it, by the time you get to the O, it's the 0. You'll find me. It's just a picture. I think I have my race helmet on or something. Okay. But Sam Fellows on Instagram, and then I have a website, samfellowsracing.com. And if you want to get in touch with me, or if you want to buy that car, that race car, you can find my email address there. Yeah.
And the Racing Academy too, right? Like
Ron Fellows Karting Championship. But it's we like to think of ourselves as kind of like the AAA hockey of racing. Like there's lots of different ways you can go racing, but this gives you an option to race at a highest level in a professional like environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So go check them out. Definitely, I think my son was. I took him to. What's the one in Goodwood, right? Yeah, last summer, and he had a blast there. So and especially bring him after on the track. He's like, I want to go again. And
It's about to get expensive, Tim.
Yeah, I know. It's all right. So thank you very much. If you enjoyed today's episode and looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, you know where to find us. Please give us a like and follow us on Spotify as well. And remember, dream it, believe it, achieve it. It's a beautiful day to sell homes. Thank you very much for listening. Hi, I'm Tim Kern, and I proudly lead the TimSold team. We're voted as one of the top 3 brokerages in Markham, and we will sell your house fast and for top dollar with the least amount of hassle, or we guarantee to buy it. Call us today and start packing.